Good afternoon and welcome to Designing Responsible AI Solutions. I am so pleased to welcome my colleagues, Rachel and Jesse, who will be having a great conversation with everyone and answering some questions and answers about AI today. Welcome, Jesse and Rachel.
Good afternoon. How is everybody today? So we have what we're going to be talking to you about is designing responsible AI solutions, as my cat tries to get into the camera. And my name is Rachel Acker, VP of Excellence Strategy and Research.
Sorry,
and
Rachel.
We'll be talking about, and what we're going to be doing today is walking you through a few different principles and framing the myth, the principles, and the journey. I'm going to pass it over to Jesse to take us through the first half of this, and then we're going to tag team through the rest of the deck.
Thanks, Rachel. So as digital creators and technologists, we tell ourselves that technology is neutral, but that's really naive. Technology alone is not the answer. We need to dig deeper. Leaders and decision makers need to recognize how far they've grown away from understanding the needs of others not like them, and recognize how seemingly small decisions can impact society at large in dangerous, harmful ways. At the same time, we have a responsibility to not amplify the beliefs of groups that aim to harm or cause other groups to suffer. Recently, the AI Bill of Rights came out, and it's a guide for society that protects all people from threats like systems supposed to help with patient care have proven unsafe, ineffective, or biased. Algorithms used in hiring and credit decisions have been found to reflect and reproduce existing unwanted inequities or embed new harmful bias and discrimination. Unchecked social media data collection has been used to threaten people's opportunities, undermine their privacy, or pervasively track their activity, often without their knowledge or consent. The myth of being human. It isn't limited to the physical body. AI development in machine reasoning, knowledge representation, and human-like perception touches every aspect of our lives. Our needs in society are driven by our ability to navigate the digital landscape. The experiences we have in the digital world have fueled our economy thus far. The privileged individual. In product development, technology has driven the demand for frictionless experiences that increase engagement. Fast forward a decade and we're deep in the attention economy that's generating societal harms. If you need examples, just look at the latest headlines. This individualistic desire for privilege has turned engagement into a dangerous measure of success. Today, in most, if not all, product and service organizations, engagement is the core requirement for delivering solutions customers will adopt. TikTok is a great example of how AI precisely amplifies behavioral patterns at scale. There was recently a TikTok that revealed a fake person had been generated to represent the content of a real human being. The perceptual characteristics of this TikTok influencer were entirely generated with Web3 tools. This account had thousands of followers before the account owner announced that they had contrived the entire situation, which brings us to the eroding trust in social structures and really the hype and harms of AI. We're really not having the right conversations around AI at the moment. These are technical issues or issues that a code fix can't remedy. These are socio-technical issues. Fear marketing is creating a lot of noise and preventing critical conversations that help distinguish what's important to understand and what's not. The myth that AI is a magic money-making bullet needs to be replaced with a different story if we are to leverage this technology to do good. From a practical sense, which function owns the design and deployment of AI technologies? Who determines if it's ethical and safe for public use? Who's accountable when the model output affects the livelihood of a human being? What do organizations need to safely deploy an AI system? These are the questions that we think should be considered in the development of AI. So let's begin by asking the question, how might we reframe AI as a techno-social discussion? So a couple supporting definitions of what we mean when we use these terms. When we use the phrase socio-technical system, we're talking about beneficial machines to help evolve humanity, a new design medium, an accelerator of change that's powerful enough to impact society long-term. And our AI shorthand that we use refers to the family of machine learning algorithms, the super tools that behave almost human-like, adapt with feedback, but are narrow in scope. Now, for our definition of what we mean by good AI. Good AI is an emergent, process-oriented, and multidisciplinary systems approach to delivering responsible, trustworthy, and beneficial AI solutions. By adding the noun good, we embed subjective properties to the math and draw analogies to natural systems like murmuration. With this slight shift in framing, we've opened up space for other disciplines to influence the design and development of AI-driven experiences. Now developing AI systems is more analogous to growing a garden rather than architecting a skyscraper. We don't need blueprints as much as we need the right conditions for growth and the right seeds. The conversation hopefully shifts from engaging to nurturing. And with a very different metric of success, we can now define a different set of value drivers. So let's now move to understanding a little bit of what it is that we mean by beneficial, responsible, and sustainable. From desirable experiences to beneficial experiences, from feasible to responsible tech, and from viable to sustainable growth. If we were to imagine an aspirational goal for AI, it would be to amplify human expertise in pursuit of a well-being economy. Good AI is a zoom out from the individual to the collective as an intelligent multi-organism where individuals move together in a flow, a collaborative leadership of learning from neighbors to adapt to uncertainty and build resiliency. Just as the Belmont Report details the principles of beneficence, respect for persons, and justice, good AI details principles around benefit to people, responsible tech, and sustainable growth. How so? So we focus on beneficial experiences that are inclusive and meet people where they are. But beneficial for whom? Inclusive how and which people where. With any use of technology, there is the issue of goal alignment between personal needs and a greater good. Lead from what people value, shift goals from what works to the right thing to do. To understand who benefits, you need to understand how people might benefit. Open the design and development process to include your target audience in co-design. Responsible innovation protects humanity. So fair to whom, trustworthy how, who's accountable, transparency of biases, these are the questions that arise when we start to think about responsible AI. We need our technology to make us wiser as individuals and as a civilization. This means how we use technology needs to align to those values and our long-term needs, not just address our dopamine fixes. It protects humanity by preventing the amplification of human bias and harm. Responsible innovation is hard work. Sustainable growth through cooperation. So how do we shift business value from counting things to mapping connections? And the purpose of growth to not win, but to thrive as a multi-organism system. The impact of an AI system can span organizations, such as collaboration and partnership, is now more important than leapfrogging the competition. Most B2B2C organizations understand the importance of cultivating their ecosystem as part of their growth strategy. And we apply that same thinking here in our good AI model. So to bring it a bit more to practice and some other folks in the AI space, what makes AI human-centered? How does AI relate to the ideas of design in the same way that we practice as human-centered designers? Ben Schneiderman's two-dimensional HDAI model is a great example of thinking about AI and humans and how they work together. So in the top right, his objective or his suggested objective is to have AI in the loop and humans in control so that the system can deliver the best that humans have to offer and the best that AI has to offer. To summarize, a good AI initiative within an organization can be described as a system of stocks and flows. We take that inspiration from Janelle Meadows' thinking in systems, as well as the broader systems thinking or world and ideas. As automation increases, less human capabilities would be required and triggers a signal to the organization to increase human expertise. In this closed loop system, there's no reduction of resources. The myth that technology reduces human resources is just that, a myth. The fluidity of a socio-technical system is the underlying nature of good AI, and it is the responsibility of the organization to reduce the oscillations. Our goal, then, as designers, technologists, and leaders, is to build a mechanism for organizational structures to support AI initiatives that balance human agency with automation. Next, we'll introduce a set of principles that drive these adaptive behaviors. So we'll walk through 10 principles, and for each principle, we seed a starter thought for you to take away. Some way in which we see this being applied or going just a little bit deeper in terms of how the principle can play out in our work and in yours. As a systematic approach, we draw inspiration from systems thinking, future thinking, ethics, and sociology in an attempt to create shared language that connects to the disciplines and works across organizations. So principle number 1, measure impact using a systems thinking approach. The reason that we do that is because scale, velocity, and efficiency are the strengths of artificial intelligence technologies. However, we should not limit their impact to a single metric because of the scale that they reach. So we should be looking at we should be taking a systems view in how AI impacts multiple dimensions all at the same time. You might even consider moving beyond quantitative metrics altogether. Pay attention to the objective and what to optimize, not just what is quantifiable. Don't just count, assess quality. Don't quit at, if you can't measure it, you don't need to pay attention to it. We may not be able to measure values like responsibility, fairness, justice, agency, freedom, or truth, but we need to be able to discuss how AI systems impact these values. Our actions shape the system, and the system shapes our actions. We could think of anchors as the leverage points within the system. When modeled, the outputs drive decisions like who qualifies for a mortgage, or whose resume is flagged to be read by a human, or whose care should be prioritized in a clinical setting. These scores don't mean anything more than unexplainable frustration. Instead of a yes/no answer, support people with effective, transparent decision-making in a series of trade-offs and fine-tuning experiences. Leverage future thinking to plan for long-term growth. So built within closed product dimensions, but deployed within a complex, ever-changing social context, requires anticipation of socio-technical needs. That's really the idea behind this principle, is that the world that AI technology may be deployed in today is not necessarily that it will play out in tomorrow. And so having an eye for what trends are in the middle of driving drastic systemic change in any industry or system will give us a better understanding of how to implement and how to eventually change the AI products that we build today. How do we do that? So we recommend expanding time horizons. Futures thinking helps you understand drivers of change and the ways to arrive at plausible futures. Anticipatory design workshops bring multidisciplinary teams together to define values that align diverse perspectives. New ways of gathering requirements will help create our next generation of super tools. Tools that people use to create their own experiences so that control over what can go wrong can be mitigated by the individual. Deliberately evolve the balance between human control and automation. Address the fear of loss of control directly. Reflect personal values and objectives through organizational structures and policies in data ownership and rights. The fear of losing control permeates most pop culture references to AI today. Reframe that fear into opportunities for new experiences that reflect personal values and objectives. Give digital citizens co-creation and ownership rights to their own data. balance automation with skills building for continuous learning within organizational structures. Humans are in control when the tools they use can be trusted to act on their behalf and for their benefit. Digital citizens have to fight to own their own data, and organizations need our consent to use our data. We need to redesign terms of use, design new social contracts, brief and direct consent requests. Data brokers frequently collect consumer data from numerous sources without consumers' permission or knowledge. Moreover, there is a risk that inaccurate and faulty data can be used to make decisions about their lives or the lives of others, such as whether they will qualify for a loan or get a job. Documented patterns show that personal data is being aggregated by data brokers to profile communities in harmful ways. And today, we only have a patchwork of laws that protect citizens. So this is our opportunity to take it into our own hands and prevent those harmful patterns from perpetuating. Directly challenge and circumvent human bias. With AI, we can and should remove known human biases in critical decision-making situations. The critiques of automated bias are warranted, but let's look a little closer. Redlining and other historical injustices have been a direct result of human bias. With AI, we have the opportunity to remove the chance for human bias in critical decision-making situations, like creditworthiness. Already, algorithms are being created to check the other as an approach to root out deeply ingrained human bias. AI learns from example, and without good examples to learn from, it won't behave well. We need to curate good examples for training a healthy data set. Otherwise, the garbage that goes in will only produce garbage coming out. A traumatized data set will only amplify the systemic injustices of our current world. We can't assume data can be sourced without critical human evaluation and intervention. AI should be in the loop and humans in control even prior to outputs being generated. Distribute leadership and responsibilities. Organize shared governance and social contracts to manage risk. The internal and public success of any artificial intelligence initiative relies on your organization's ability to distribute due diligence, monitoring, and decision-making. Everyone in the organization needs to be aware of the impact of AI on their own outputs, as well as potential effects on other teams. Historically, we have seen regulatory offices or ethics offices being the sole arbiter of oversight, but this simply won't do for technology as powerful as AI. And perhaps it shouldn't have been enough with even our current tools. In any case, the tensile strength generated by integrated collaborative approaches to monitoring and management will provide an exceptional ability to prevent harm. We can liken this to cybersecurity today, where everyone is responsible and able to flag potential harm. And with that, I will pass it over to Rachel.
Thanks, Jesse. So for principle number 6, we talk about actively seeking opportunities to generate new and better ways of knowing. So the power of AI can blur the boundaries of quant and qual data at massive scales with high confidence, and this can close the gap between what we know and don't know. So the data that we want to understand a problem may not be the same data that we have. And that's typically one of the problems that is a big problem in data management. So we need to get creative in how we generate data that isn't available, but better represents the truth that we want to see, to evolve the truth. So the process of finding truth is a human endeavor, and that might mean understanding those who are not like us so that we can build shared language. So this principle really gets to the heart of a designer or an innovator's mindset, where process matters more than the what. And in this principle, we improve the human capacity with creative augmentation. Human judgment is complex, value-based decision-making situations will be challenging to replicate in code. So we need to get creative. And as arbiters of good AI, we must find ways to scale AI based on the patterns and factors of human lived experiences with continuous feedback loops, meta feedback, causal loops that help improve the quality of AI and in turn create radically new experiences. So aim to develop models that enable co-creation where technology adapts to people. Remember that AI is in the loop and the human is in control. Feedback loops create space for new experiences and guided transformation of both human and technology in symbiosis. Amplify aspirational human behaviors. So the impact of social media on mental health in the past couple of decades is an example of how designing for clicks, engagement, based on behavioral economics fails to acknowledge or take accountability for a participant's well-being. So this principle extends to complicated and complex behaviors like improving health and saving money. Nudges that prey on fear work, but to reflect how we as humans drive towards well-being is to amplify human agency. So at the core, we need to re-examine our notions of productivity and shift that productivity mindset to a collaborative mindset if we are to survive as a society. The language we use to create meaningful work needs to embody human values, care, and healthy growth. The system norms, behaviors, mental models, and relationship structures, they need to be designed to activate a sense of well-being. And here we develop dialogic capabilities by incentivizing cooperation and co-creation. The current data capturing often happens as a byproduct of engaging with other services and products, and unless structured around intent, tend to end up in what we would call a data swamp. So good AI should acknowledge, incentivize, and reward people with co-ownership of contributing to the collection, utilization, and sharing of the data. So this principle creates space for meaning and relationships to merge within teams, organizations, and communities. So AI systems aren't contained within the boundaries of one discipline if you follow the data. It means space needs to be created for meaning and relationships to emerge within teams, organizations, and communities. Dialogic capabilities mean not talking past each other in meetings, but digging into uncomfortable conversations and commit to solving a problem rather than posturing academic excellence within a domain. It means experts need to get into a learning mode to widen their lens of expertise and include other disciplines in day-to-day conversations. And so we come to our last principle, which is to continually evolve based on your organization's purpose and values in a ritual of continuous learning activities. How do we create shared language around process improvement that amplifies organizational values? So it's rituals, the rituals like a weekly huddle or a daily coffee chat, are ways to help evolve systems if implemented with the intention intended. Good AI will require new rituals that can evolve shared language, language that links what's familiar in our past to navigate the present and connect the present with the inspiration and intention of the future. So from a systems thinking perspective, rituals have a variety of affordances that are particularly relevant to societal challenges. It is able to inscribe identity, to make and mark transformation, to create or change relationships, to negotiate social contracts and conflict, to support contemplation and an inspection of experience, and to make change manageable. So where do we go from here? To go from what's possible to what if is a journey on paths not yet taken, and it requires courage. We fear change, and at the same time, change inspires us to rethink the comfort of how we live. Technology, once again, is disrupting how we communicate, collaborate, and create new experiences. So a couple of days ago, the White House published the AI Bill of Rights as a means to protect American people from the harms that AI can have on us. It outlines these 5 principles. It gives examples of why these principles are important, and then describes the expectations of automated systems, a blueprint for industry to create new standards and policies around these principles. So I'm not going to go through all the details of the principles here, but you can download the Bill of Rights from the White House Gov site to understand your rights as a digital citizen. And now as we switch over to industry and take a look at product development, what might the design process look like within an organization? So a good AI initiative is a good time to reassess your product design practice by applying what we describe as strategic friction. So designers, particularly service designers, have historically served consumers directly by understanding their unmet needs and making sense of complex systems. So in good AI initiatives, designers can begin to deliver on a more complex challenge of enhancing, improving, and creating social value. It means thoughtfully slowing down the product design lifecycle to stop and anticipate things that could go wrong. So designing a good AI initiative could mean generating concepts of interest, new forms of requirements that map data journey and simulate an intended outcome and experience, clarify that intended use, drivers of change, and anticipate all the ways a model could fail in addition to anticipating the way it could create a beneficial experience. An example, experiences that help citizens spend within their means to protect them from the flood of consumer decisions. So much of the hard work in building AI systems is in finding the right data, cleaning, transforming, the tedious work that model developers go through. This should be part of the discovery process and expanded beyond the accountability of just the data teams. As model development techniques mature, organizations would be wise to give non-technical teams the ability to influence model design and development. So how do we improve AI quality and human agency? So there is a new form of AI engineering that chains models. The field is really new and it keeps growing. So there's lots of new things to learn every day. And I don't claim to have expertise in all of these models. But what is interesting is, so instead of developing one model to give you one answer, you can chain models to verify other models. So what this means is maybe if one model spits out a hypothesis, another model could verify it or explain it. So this behavior can be intentionally designed in a way to improve the quality of the entire socio-technical system. So by making sure a cross-disciplinary team is involved, diversity of perspectives, there will be more opportunities to assess the responsibility of the system throughout the development life cycles. What's brilliant is that by involving non-technical teams in the development process, you're essentially also upskilling your organization on AI literacy. So we live in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment. Our financial, health, and educational systems are struggling to adapt to a rapidly changing world. And if we've all experienced as we've all experienced in living through a global pandemic, as I recover from COVID right now, our current societal changes are technical, economic, environmental, and overall complex in nature. From the recession, growing aging population, the nursing shortages in our healthcare systems, reproductive rights being challenged, workplace well-being, and mental health, the list goes on. A personal spending model might present actions to slow down spending, while a mental health model, in recognizing negative patterns of behavior, could signal a buddy as an intervention. So the way to think about feedback loops is think of the model outputs as a series of trade-offs and fine-tuning experiences that can be designed and engineered. So now let's take a look at some of the tools that you already have access to today. Yes, they don't necessarily have commercial use yet, but these should inspire us to think of different ways of doing work and designing the applications that we work on. So here, instead of searching for images, we can create inspirational images. So think about how you might use these tools in your organizations. Just by describing the words creative, imaginative. And so this is what Midjourney is able to do. So perhaps Midjourney could be your tool, if you're a practitioner, to envision how to reframe a built environment. Perhaps it can help inspire us to redesign an urgent care room from something that is cold and sterile to something that is warm, calm, natural, and healing. So the skills of prompt engineering can be described a little bit like black art, but its potential is compelling. Alternatively, you can write articles by simply describing a sentence, then choosing a tone of voice and audience. You write. This is a content generation and translation for audiences in the healthcare setting. Think of it as a constant concern for our clients, particularly when communicating to audiences different from themselves. Content strategists could think about using this tool not to replace them, but to test the understandability of certain pieces of content like terms of use or eligibility of benefits. So tools like YouWrite, I believe, will help usher in streamlined approaches to fair and equitable content translation that is available to everyone, that everyone can understand. Now think about how you stay up to date with industry news. With Waverly, you can learn about new information while ignoring ads. So if you are able to browse these articles without distraction, imagine the amount of time that you would have to actually be able to read the information that is relevant to you. So I have been using it specifically to help with doing secondary desk research. Now maybe apply this to a different setting. Imagine this model helping a healthcare professional find interventions by describing their problem. So we can imagine in the future, maybe patients finding and browsing through interventions that best match their needs just by describing what it is that they might be feeling. Doesn't that put agency back into patients' lives? So in this healthcare use case, we have the patient-owned data. Could AI free patient data from electronic health medical records and finally bury fax machines so that people have more agency over their health? Because when individual persons don't hold power over their own medical record, this can lead to a disconnect in patients' journeys. No matter where that person is or which facility a person seeks care, they should have access to their own source of truth. They should own that source of truth. This also applies to when pharmacies and where a person could own their prescriptions in a digital way. And so with that, I'm going to turn it to Jesse to walk us through a couple of the rest of the slides.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for powering through as well. I know it's tough. So I'm going to cover a financial use case, and I think it's important to reflect not only on this presentation, but also just the general rhetoric around fear of bias and what AI's impact can be in perpetuating some of the racial, gender discrimination impacts that we see today. We ourselves in this presentation talk about it cautiously and how we can undermine the sort of like human elements. And I think that that's a critical component to this work, is inverting this idea of AI perpetuating the negative side effects of being human, like carrying implicit bias with us. When we think about things like redlining in the 60s, or even the modern credit score being developed in the 80s, these are very human sort of tools that didn't require a tremendous amount of technology or AI in order to have large scale negative impacts to people of color or to immigrants or to women. And so in inverting this situation and thinking about it as how can AI fundamentally re-author what it means to make decisions about people's creditworthiness, we think of it as more of a solution in developing non-bias forms of understanding and assessing people's creditworthiness, by bringing together the sort of like disparate technologies and methods that we've used previously, as well as emerging more human methods of responding to creditworthiness. We've seen in our own industry that there are new models of banks and lenders that are geared specifically towards women, specifically towards people of color, specifically towards immigrants. And the way that they're able to measure the creditworthiness of their audiences is different than what a traditional bank like Bank of America or Capital One is able to do. And so how can we build in those same types of qualitative metrics into an AI system that can ultimately provide that same level of understanding and creditworthiness to a broader audience than what those small lenders and small banks are able to do today? And with that, we will open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse and Rachel. If you have questions, feel free to pop them into the question box on the side of the screen, and we will take a couple questions as they come in. Rachel and Jesse, I know you can see those questions. Do you want to start off with the first one? We'll take it from there.
Sounds good. All right, so we see that there's a question. So how do you advocate for the stance on AI when company leadership sees it as a path for growth, revenue, etc.? So I think those are not equally, those are the same goals, I believe. You have to, good AI has to also do the same things if you want to grow. Jesse, any thoughts to that?
Could you repeat the question? It broke up a little bit.
Question is, how do you advocate for the stance on AI when company leadership sees it as a path for growth?
Yeah, this is something I think we deal with even prior to AI. And my frequent response is to turn back towards the VUCA environment within which we operate, because oftentimes the goal of growth or the goal of revenue is pretty short-sighted in terms of the sort of like longer arc of trends that are happening in the market. So specifically when it comes to AI, as we develop new technology or new offerings with our clients, or as your organizations go about that, it's important to consider that while you may see a spike in revenue for 1, maybe 2 years, if the underlying AI is not good in the sense that we talk about it, then it's not something that's going to be financially sustainable or viable for very long, and ultimately could end up being a major cost to the organization in the grand scheme of things. So I would recommend really trying to urge a longer view of the revenue objectives and the welfare of the company, rather than looking for a quick win.
Thank you. Couldn't have said it better. All right, so now another question. So in your experience or in your research, which groups, teams within our organization are taking ownership of some of the issues that we've pointed out today? So I think in some of the work that I've seen, it feels like we are starting to create new types of teams, like around AI ethics. So there's a chief responsible AI officer, and within that capability, the teams are responsible for bringing together multidisciplinary teams so that we can start to connect IT, product teams, designers, the operations teams, testers, all to be part of the development of AI systems.
Yeah, I would just add to that that I think we see a very similar challenge, or we have seen a very similar challenge happen with our clients for decades now in the move to a service design model, particularly because the organizations that we work with, and no organization that I've ever come across has a service owner or a service manager in the same way that you would have a product owner or a product manager. And ultimately what that means is that as organizations have moved from being singularly product focused to more of an integrated omni-channel service experience, you naturally have to move to a much more collaborative, interdisciplinary, intra-team model of delivering that experience for customers, which really should be the objective of the organization as a whole, right? Is being motivated and organized around a single sort of or a holistic experience for your customers has been a much more challenging thing. Well, it's been a much easier thing to do and move in silos because of the singular outputs that each team is responsible for. But once you start to implement things like AI or service design, you need to consider the sort of touch points, how they're integrated with other touch points, outputs, collections of data, management of data, where an IT team may be responsible for capturing, organizing, sorting data, analyzing data. But the sort of like regulatory team needs eyes in that. Product needs eyes in terms of like improving product or making product decisions. It quickly becomes a very much more integrated or tangled web of decision making and conversation. And so, it is definitely an organizational transformation that is required of doing good AI, and perhaps AI just in general. Like, even if you weren't to pursue AI in the way that we're conceiving of it and recommending it, organizational transformation, as we've seen with service design and omni-channel approaches, like thoroughly requires a redistribution of how work is done inside organizations.
All right, one more question. So if I work at an organization that hasn't dipped their toes into AI yet, is there a good place to start? I realize that's very industry specific, but what are the types of questions we should be asking ourselves to identify key areas? Do you want to take that, Jesse?
I feel like you might be better suited for that one. I know I've been a bit more verbose, but I definitely feel like you might be better suited for that one.
So I would say there's a lot that is happening on LinkedIn as well too. And I don't think there is one good way to start because it is going to be contextual to the industry that you're in. But you don't need to be looking at all of the technical details of how the models work. And AI ethics seems to be a good place that kind of starts to draw the language that will help non-technical folks understand the implications of AI. So follow industry leaders on LinkedIn. I think it's still such a new field, and it's still such a very young field that you're really going to need to keep up to date with what's going on. And a lot of what we would have talked about in our the webinar here today, these new tools, they're going to change in literally weeks and months. So there's going to be a proliferation of even more tools out there to choose from. It's really more a matter of trying to understand what problem you're trying to solve, and then being able to maybe use something like Waverly to create a topic and be able to then pull in articles that you can read about it. So that's what I would say to that.
I think the only thing I'd add is, I maybe just as a bit of a dreamer over here, ask yourself what questions you haven't been able to solve at your company or in your industry previously that have sort of been out of reach for whatever reasons, whether they're, you know, technical or not. The one that comes to mind is interoperability of data in the healthcare system. Is there a way for AI to manage the translation of data from one system to another? I'm not entirely sure, but it's definitely worth exploring, since, you know, there is no single unified body to mandate or organize that interoperability for all of the various healthcare companies. But that sort of thinking, I think, will at least get the gears turning and maybe get a couple executives excited about what's possible.
Who should we follow in LinkedIn? So there's a few folks, and I can post them in the chat as well too, so that you can have that. There are a couple of folks like Rabbit Dotan, who talks a lot about AI ethics. There's also Reed Blackman, who has written quite a few articles in HBR around ethical machines. And so he's coming at it from a non-technical standpoint as well too, which makes it easier to consume the information.
I'd like to step in and say, don't sell yourself short, Rachel. People should follow you on LinkedIn and
Sure, me as
Jesse
well.
and MadPow. If you're not following MadPow already, we also have some great articles live on our website on the madpow.com that Rachel and Jesse have written together. If you haven't read those yet, definitely go check them out. And we'll be making more AI content over the next couple of months. So keep an eye on MadPow as somebody who's really taking this seriously and looking towards the future of AI and design. So I don't see any other questions from the audience. If there are more that trickle in the next couple of minutes, we'd be happy to take them on. But final words, Rachel and Jesse, what do you want to leave us with before we jump off the call?
I would say like these are all very aspirational and somewhat esoteric, right? These principles. And really it's meant to inspire a different kind of conversation. So if you find yourself stuck, I'm hoping that you'll be able to come back to some of the principles that we talked about here to kind of inspire you to think more broadly and think outside the box. You're muted.
I would say that to any designers on the call, former designers or design leadership folks, you know, in a lot of ways, I think, you know, if anybody's familiar with Mike Montero, designers were a little bit behind the curve in how they approached emerging technology, you know, with social media and other tools that we currently have in stepping up and sharing a voice about creating value for society and not just creating engagement or whatever sort of like metrics you know, other folks within your organizations said you should be trying to achieve with your designs. You know, speak up. Now is the time. This is the early stages of a new avenue, of a new horizon, and there's no sense in us, you know, missing that window twice in a row. We should step up and we should share our voice on what we think is good, not only for the company but for people out in the world.
Thank you both so much for sharing your thoughts. This has been really incredible work that you guys have done here, both with your articles and with this webinar. And I hope that everyone has really learned something that they can take into their own design practice or their own company going forward, or at least to think about, right, in the back of your mind as the world moves in this new direction. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Rachel and Jesse, and we will see you around MadPow. Have a great one. Bye.
Everybody, thanks for joining.